Hey everybody, this is Silverspook, and this is the Silverspook video about Extremities, New Orleans, Las Vegas, and the long Camo'd arm of the Extreme-est. So, what am I talking about here? The pictures, if you don't know who these people are, if you haven't kept up on these current events, are of suspects in the uh, violent violent events that have happened in New Orleans and Vegas. And they are currently there is investigations currently happening as of this video. This is Saturday after the events of New Year's, the very not good New Year's events. Let's put it that way for now. Um, yeah. So what is actually going on with this? Why? There are several, at least two, if not three or more, extreme events. Let's put it that way. Extreme events that resulted in a lot of people being harmed in these cities. One involved a Cybertruck. One involved a Cybertruck which exploded and was on fire. And one involves a vehicular attack that caused the unaliving of a large number of people. And so, I kind of wanted to, kind of talk about and think about in a wider, broader perspective, what is this extremism? I don't want to use the other word. Obviously, there's a word that starts with the letter T, and it almost rhymes with heroism, which we can't use because reasons, because of the unfree, censorship-filled U.S. and Western world. Unfortunately, we can't use that word. But yeah, what is that, right? What is it? And when I said like obviously the long camel, I'm being double if not triple entendre. There's a double triple pun in that. The long camel arm, because obviously you can see in the image, right, the suspects in these the suspects of these horrible actions are trained by, work with, have been employed by, or funded by the United States military and U.S. U.S. funded, backed, connected entities, U.S. government, U.S. ruling class, etc. So, they literally have arms. They have long sleeve. Right, the suspect, in the New Orleans, I think, case, and on the right side of the screen, he is literally wearing, right, long camouflaged U.S. military fatigues, right, and also it's important to point out they're actually both U.S. born, so they were not, they did not immigrate to the United States. They were not born in somewhere in the Middle East and then immigrated in. The suspect in the Cybertruck at the Vegas, I think I believe it was a Trump building. I can't remember all the details of each of these individual cases, but it was a Trump building, and then there's a Cybertruck fire / explosion. At least one person unalived. According to what we know, right? So I'm gonna have to say a lot of this is like what. So, we don't know everything, but we do know at least, like, it appears that there is at least a Cybertruck that was on fire. After that, it is kind of like related to apparently, I don't know if I can even say the L word, Not loser. The LUIGI. I don't know if we can say that anymore. That's been banned off of Reddit, and it's off of many platforms. So, so much for the so-called free speech and all this nonsense. Um, but I made like at least 2 videos in the last month and a half about the UHC related topics, right? And that guy, what I mean, a lot of people are immediately relaying what the United States Police, United States FBI, United States media in general, corporate media, United States government related agencies and funded agencies, what they're saying. Okay, so uh, you know, uh, even some people who I feel like some people I see that should probably know better, but they're just like relaying what the police, FBI are saying, and that cannot. I just wanted to say that those are obviously compromised entities. Those are entities that have historically and continue to lie frequently. So we cannot just trust whatever they said, right? Obviously, I mean, because people that are saying, "Oh, this, um, the New Orleans perpetrator, the New Orleans suspect, or the Vegas suspect, um, was X and Y and Z. Poor mental health, this, and that's an interesting topic. I was listening to some folks talk about mental health. They had, they were a lone wolf that, they just, they were just not in their right mind, and then this happened, right? Whatever they're saying, right? Oh, this person. Oh, this person was working for. This was he was turned by Iran. Like that's something that was kind of coming up, right? This is something that the police, or they're saying, oh, he working for an entity that, or was, turned to the side of a Iran-backed entity, or some enemy of the United States. That's a narrative that's being pushed around. That is the police, that is the FBI, that is the U.S. government, right? And what did they just say about the events in New York, right? Related to the UHC case. They just said that, right? The UHC claims adjuster, right? There are fingerprints found on the bottle of water, a food wrapper, right? And a disposed of weapon, right? When we know the UHC shooter was wearing gloves, right? We know the facial, the zygomatic bone, the nose bridge, the distance between the eyebrows, right? The lack of unibrow versus dual brow, or not necessarily unibrow, but the eyebrow, the distance between the eyebrows of the footage, right, of the UHC suspect, right, in one of the pictures completely doesn't match, along with the nose bridge and many other things, doesn't match Mr. Luigi, right? Mario's brother. I guess I can say that. Mario's brother. And so those are basically obvious lies. Everybody knows they're lies. There's plethora of these, right? They claimed that he was using a city bike in the beginning. City bike itself, right? Just like said, this is not possible. And then also, right, we know that the U.S. police, including federal, are trained by who? ISRAEL, right? That's doing what? Constantly lying about everything, right? That's what they do. All they do is half-truth, fibtacular propaganda. They don't, right? So, and I've talked about that I've talked about that at length for like 2 of the last 5 streams, I feel, so I won't cover that too much, but let's just start there, which is that when it comes to extreme, like the word that starts with the letter T and it's a synonym for extremism. I don't even know if it can use extremism. I'm running out of words to not use on this platform. uh, so that's another form of complete non-free speech, obviously. Um, but the when it comes to that, there are so many lies. There's so much nonsense spread, incorrectness spread, and who gets to decide, right? Who quote unquote controls the narrative, right? Or controls and manufactures the consensus reality of what is, a bad, evil act, right? A violent act, right? Versus what is a valiant, good act that includes violence that was in support of a good cause, right? That is where the real struggle war is actually happening. The war is not really the war. The war is kind of almost like after the fact in a lot of cases, right? The actual kinetic shooting phase is once that kind of happens, and the dogs of quote unquote war are unleashed. The dogs of a mass violence are unleashed, right? Um, the propaganda or the informational, right? The war in the minds of the humans, right, that engage in these acts. That is where it's already been won or lost to a large extent. If the kinetic war, or often when the kinetic war breaks out, I mean, there's the informational war, informational struggle continues, right? Even during the outbreak, right? But the lead up to it is really the important part. And so what is happening now is obviously, I'll get more into more details of this, but I feel, and I think a lot of people would also agree, that this is a lead up to a new larger kinetic mass. These acts of violence, they are violent acts, right? But the way that they are spun, right, in Western media, corporate media, in particular, and also echo chambered throughout more imperialist controlled social media, right? Which this is the TikTok ban, right? Is the which the United States is trying to impose and trying to force through, right? Is directly related to this, right? Trying to control that narrative. But what I think these acts are there to push a bigger mass violent act, right? And it's to justify that. And this is so similar to the 2001, right? When the justification for invading Iraq, Syria, right? Afghanistan, all that, the war on the T word, right? The Islamophobia, the portraying the billion plus people that are Islamic or that are Muslim or that are West Asian / Middle Eastern / Arab, etc. Just as a whole, as evil as those are extremists, right? Those are the T word, and the United States, and obviously you and your children, your young men that need to sign up for the U.S. military to, again, right, save the world from the bad extremists over there. These acts feel like a lot of the run up to that, right? Now, obviously, like, who exactly did 9/11? That's a big thing that people like to talk about. It doesn't actually matter whether if the United States government secretly perpetrated its own mass T-word attacks on the World Trade Center, the United States Pentagon, which is the military headquarters, and the failed political headquarters attack on Washington D.C. or in the Capitol. Whether the United States did that to itself, some people might say that's tinfoil hat conspiracy, or those were acts of obviously OSAMA, our old pal OSAMA. I mean, maybe young people don't remember who that is. It has been 24 years since that, so that's a while. But in case you don't know that you can look up who did that 9/11 events. But the actual I mean, obviously there were the individuals there were extremely motivated, right, to do that act. It was an extreme act that involved, I mean, similar to you know the guy in the center, right, who he as far, I mean, again, we don't know, right? Actually, I shouldn't say that. According to what we what is what might be suspected, right, which is claimed by the United States government and police and etc. And these entities. Um, he took his own life in this event, in the Cybertruck, the incendiary Cybertruck event that may have involved fireworks. As I when I watched the video of it, it's like kind of looked like fireworks a bit. Um, but and so that actually is a similarity to 9/11 and the World Trade Center, because those attacks also involve the unaliving of the perpetrators, right? The people that conducted that, they didn't survive in that attack. So you have to have a certain amount of conviction about something. You have a certain amount of conviction about something to do such a thing as that, right? And obviously also, to take other people's lives, whoever, you have to have a certain, you also have to have a certain amount of conviction about those, right? Now, what exactly is in your mind when you do that? Like, what is in the mind of American soldiers, right? Millions of them that went to Vietnam, went to Kuwait, Iraq, went to Korea, right? When they went to all these countries and unalived millions of those people, right? The U.S. has conducted virtually all the wars, or its proxies have conducted virtually all the all of the wars in the last 70 years or so. All the largest ones, certainly. All the most mass, right? And you could argue those are all extreme actions. Every single one. The Vietnam War, right? The Korean War, the all the ones I just mentioned, the war in Syria, not the current one, the previous one, 2014, Libya, the U.S. and France were involved in that. All of those actions, right? Those many would argue, including people like Noam Chomsky and like left people and the global majority would say those are the big T word. Those are extreme T word. I mean, they are made to scare people, cower people, push people into falling in line with U.S. imperial capitalist planetary designs, right? You have to use our dollar. You have to let us steal your resources. You have to let us do what we want. You have to liberalize, have a fake Western liberal plutocracy, democracy, with a puppet at your head. And if you don't do that, we will Vietnamify you. We will, because Vietnam was trying to build communism. Douglas MacArthur specifically stated that if you don't do what U.S. imperial capitalists and giant mega corporate billionaire, kind of planetary elite wants, these most corrupt people and most despicable people in the world, if you don't do what they want, we, the United States, through a combination of measures, we will do extremism on you, right, till you fall in line. And as an example, right, because it's not just Vietnam, the Vietnam War, Korean War, all the sanctions. There's so many other, not just war, many other tactics they were using. These are not just wars; these are also genocidal, mass wars of aggression. They are extermination. Like, they are extreme. T word. They're extreme. The most extreme extremism. And so most people argue those are that's why I say the United States is the number one T word organization in the world. And so, sorry, I gotta clean this up here. So that's another. So when I say the long Camo'd arm of the extremists, I don't just mean I don't just mean the New Orleans suspect or the Vegas suspect who wore uh, camouflaged, gray and white, the sand theme, right, yellow and brown, or green, white and black camouflage clothing, military clothing, right? I'm talking about the long reach, the long arm of the law, quote unquote law. The police, I mean, when I mean police, I mean world police. And when I say police, I mean world mass brutalization and mass evil perpetration, which is what the internal police and the external U.S. and allied NATO military police do. That's what they actually do, right? So the long arm of the law, the world sheriff of the U.S. empire, reaching across the world to do extremism on the big scale, which is like full on invasions like Iraq or Korea or Vietnam, and then also, but also what they call non-state actor, what they call sometimes they're called moderate rebels. Sometimes they call Al Qaeda, and then they get rebranded as HTS, as they are in Syria right now. They have they just came up with new names for these entities, and so those. So when I say the extremists, like the word extreme, right? The word extreme actually comes from, a word. It means the like extremities are actually the furthest points of something, right? From extremite, from Latin extremis, right? Extremitas, the utmost or the most distant, right? So in extremities could mean, like for example, your tips of your fingers, right? Your fingers are the most extreme point on your body because they're the furthest from the center of your body, or your toes, right? Fingers and toes are extremities, right? They're very distant, right? Extremism refers to, right, there is like a right wing which may believe things that are, it has slight, racist characteristics, or they believe that there shouldn't be affirmative action or something like that, right? Or there's we shouldn't have quotas for gender, race, and sexuality, right? That might be some just a conservative right wing viewpoint. I mean, what that might count as right wing in somewhere like the United States. The extremist is like ethnic minorities should not be in the United States at all, right? So that would be extreme because it's very distant from the quote unquote center of on the political spectrum, right? So that's what those. In that sense, that's what an extremist is. Somebody says, so from that sense, there are many political actors in the United States. I mean, Donald Trump, the president, the second coming of MAGA Jesus, Donald Trump, right? He's already been president once, the second president of the United States. He had Mein Kampf, which is written by Mr. Adolf, Adolf of the Third Reich. And right, so the president is an extremist, and he's far from what quote unquote the center in that sense, right? Among other people, of course, also Joe Biden though. So Joe Biden and Donald Trump, obviously they will be counted as like in the some people would count them as the core of the United States. Supposedly they won a vote or something in the United States. I heard they have elections. They have this thing called elections in the West. Supposedly determine who represents the most people, right? So that would be the most center position, supposedly, central position that averages out the population in some kind of way. But Mr. Joe Biden, the current president, he just sent $8 billion after sending many, many, many billions of dollars in weapons to do the most extreme extremism, right? To do what Mr. Adolf of the Third Reich did, but the Holocaust 2.0, right? That we're watching live streamed, right? So Joe Biden himself is an extremist. Not just Joe Biden, his entire administration, everyone around him, and all of the entity, the ideology, and everything that he represents. the ideology and interest that he represents, that's all extremism, right? Because it's resulting in these horrible, just most extreme acts, like 200,000 innocent people being tortured into their unaliving, right? You can watch it on your you can watch all the little babies no longer alive, right? Through all the worst ways possible. Sniping 3-year-olds. I mean, everybody knows, right? That's the difference between 2001 and 2025, right? In 2001, mainstream media, the United States was way more powerful in the world economically. Soft power, cultural power, informational control, economic power, military power. It was a unipolar moment. It was still kind of the unipolar moment, if there was ever one. Today, the U.S. was doing atrocities the whole time. It was doing the most extremist things in the world, right? That entire time, across the world. 800 million. I mean, it was in Yugoslavia. It was Europe. It was doing things in Clinton was doing things in Bosnia, horrible things there. Doing things in the Middle East, right? The Gulf War had just happened. They were Central South America, the whole everywhere, right? And then 9/11 happened, and the United States, right, tried to rally people to say, okay, now we really have to go and stop those horrible extremists over there, those horrible extremist T-words out there in Iraq. And there's we have Saddam Hussein in Iraq, and then we have the Al Qaeda in Afghanistan. We got to go in there. We got to get them. Those are real bad extremists over there in Al Qaeda in that Afghanistan. We got to get into Libya, Syria. We got to get into Iran. Is a big mothership, right? Sending drones over New Jersey from the mothership, like Protoss carrier interceptors. And Iran is sending all of them, right? We have to get in. There was a senator that came out and said we have to bomb Iran. I remember in 2001, 2002, he came on like CNN and he said we have to bomb Iran, and he just kept saying that. Joe Biden and everyone else, they were all in lockstep with this. The whole United States was just basically going with this flow, and because Iran was the number one sponsor of these quote unquote extremists. The so-called Western academic intellectual community, there was a event called Enlightenment 2.0. I remember very clearly myself, where the best Western scientists from India, United States, Europe, Germany, they had Sam Harris, they had all the new atheists were hot at the time, right? It was the God Delusion, Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, he's still around nowadays. Neurophysicists. They had astronomers, Neil deGrasse Tyson. They had medical scientists, physicists, psychologists, sociologists. All the best. They all came to this event called Enlightenment 2.0. It's the second Enlightenment, right? And it was just, they all said the biggest topic was religion, and is a problem, yes, right? Because there's many new atheists that were kind of upset at their parents for being, kind of extremist, quiverful, right-wing Christian, evangelical, conservatives of some kind, right? And there's this big pushback against that, in the culture war, and it was in the university liberal intellectual world of the 2000s. It was like you could almost feel like there was the empire was paying off academics, book writers, intellectual, university professors, the whole various fields, right? The intellect, people with education, as opposed to having gone to a lot of evangelical sermons, and that's their education, right? That what they call quote unquote the rednecks in the United States. That's the way that U.S. politics tends to operate. Red and blue, that's the way it was in that time. So but yeah, in the universities also we have like religion is a big problem, but the number one problem is we have to deal with the extremists, right? yes, Christianity is not true because Richard Dawkins talked about, like, the divine watchmaker, 747. Like, there's all these arguments against God. I mean, YouTube began as like atheists debating theists over how many angels could dance on a pinhead, or how many flying spaghetti monster, pasta filled tentacles could dance on a pinhead. It was all these, like, philosophical debates. That was part of the intellectual world, right? And there's a lot of people, but then they're going, the biggest problem is not Christianity per se. It is actually the biggest problem. If you have a college education and you, like, broke away from your abusive right-wing Christian parents and you came to LA, New York City, Seattle, Miami, right? You got a big fat education with your $200,000 of student debt you're in now. Deal with that student debt by signing up for the U.S. military and stopping the real threat, which is Islamic extremism. The Muslim religion. Sam Harris came on stage. He got like 3 standing ovations. And he said, the Muslim religion in the Quran is the most vile, disgusting, abominable possible ideas that just worship needless killing. There is a endless, infinite bloodlust in the Quran. People are being radicalized by the Quran. People are being turned into the T word by the Quran, right? They want 76 virgins, right? As if Israel isn't full of pedophiles and people who do mass non-consensual grape minus the G, right? Sam Harris, right? Known Zionist, and the academic community was like, oh my God, yes, this is the problem. We all have to use our brains to build the biggest mass surveillance state, build the best tech at Google and Facebook, right? Facebook didn't exist at the time. Build the best Google tech. We have to build out this great digital infrastructure, high-tech infrastructure, computers, cameras, robotics, drones. We got to do everything we can, right? If we can't be on the front lines, right? If we can't go on the front lines and fight this extremism in the Middle East in the 2000s, we have to do everything we can to support from the back. We have to fight the war of words. There was a recent somebody in a Harvard visiting, a Harvard speech was given by Zionist, right? Same thing at Oxbridge in London, and it said, like, we are fighting a war. We are God's people, God's chosen people, fighting against the Amalek. That's what they call them. Anyone that's against them, and so we're fighting against the greatest, darkest barbarism out there. We are alone, this tiny little speck in the Middle East, and we're gonna fight that, and we will fight that. But you have to fight the war of words. You have to convince everyone, right, that it's the informational war, right? You have to convince everyone that what we need to do is we need to send the United States into every single country in that West Asian region, that whole area, and the Central Asian. We have to deal with everyone. We have to take out everyone there. They're saying nuclear weapons, biological weapons, everything. Obviously that's extremism, and the United States does do that. By the way, U.S. does use. Apparently, they have used it's highly probable they have used a nuclear weapon recently in Syria. With there is a 0.3 kiloton, caused an actual, 3 on the Richter scale seismic event, earthquake. It's almost certain that, and there was a huge sigma 8, meaning extremely, like 1 in a trillion or more, improbable event, radioactivity event. That is an extreme event, right? A sigma 8. That's an improbability theory, right? That's basically says it's almost impossible that would occur. Like it would take like in a trillion years that would happen, and it suddenly happened in the Mediterranean. That there's this huge spike in radioactive fallout. The radioactive isotopes were suddenly emitting these energy signatures that sensors detected. And so, using nuclear weapons, which the United States has done, I mean, through its proxy in the Middle East, but it's also done it to Hiroshima. But the U.S. has just used a nuclear weapon, right? There's also claims that it used a nuclear weapon on Yemen in the last decade. Now, of course, like whether they did or not, I mean, if the United States used a nuclear weapon on Syria through its little proxy, that would be an extreme event, right? Like along with all the others, right? But of course, we're not supposed. You can't learn about that because that extremism is not beneficial, or people understanding that extreme T word and also extreme, that is extremely dangerous. That could wipe out the entire planet Earth, right? You could bake the whole Earth in a 10 million degree ball of fire if that continues and the United States starts a nuclear nuclear exchange with Russia, which would involve China and Iran because they're all, and North Korea because they're all strategic military partners. The U.S. doesn't seem to be getting that. The U.S. empire don't seem to be picking up on that. There are very few. There is an extreme dearth of brain cells, and there was no morals ever. But there's an extreme dearth of brain cells to rub together in Washington, and all the other headquarters of global capitalist power. But especially that one, that's where they operate from for the most part. So that's extreme. There's an extreme lack of intelligence, an extreme surplus of copium, an extreme surplus of copium. But we're really having a lot of anyway, so let's move on though. So I haven't talked about any specific details, so maybe we get to some of those. Also I started a bit late, so I'm gonna have to end a little bit earlier than I wanted to, but that's okay. Long arm, So what I mean by the long arm, the long Camo'd arm, is that the United States uses these. If the United States military, right, for example, in Vietnam, let's take Vietnam, right? You had the direct invasion, you had the B-52 bombers, right? Formal United States military. I forget. The United States doesn't really declare war anymore, right? The United States has an extreme. The Western imperial capitalist powers have an extreme, which is neo-colonial, which is colonial power ultimately. They have an extreme lack of adherence to their own rules. How many wars do you like? When I was in school, right, and I was watching Schoolhouse Rock, and the bill on Capitol Hill, remember that? This is how laws work, right? Supposedly, after they go through, they're submitted in the House, and and then there's a vote, and then the Senate, also has to pass, and then the bill has to be ratified. There can be a veto. It's a blah 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 blah. Congress is supposed to vote to declare to have the United States get involved with and enter a war. There's supposed to be a declaration of war from the United States legislative branch, supposedly. But the way it's worked for basically the last at least decade, if not 2 decades, but really forever ultimately, is that the United States basically, whatever the imperialist powers want, they'll just spill a war out gradually until things are so wrapped up in nobody can even tell that they're at war anymore. Inside the military, there's many brainwashed, confused people, including their own generals. They're like, I thought we're supposed to enter wars that are actual threats to our national security. And then people like Colonel Wilkerson come out and they're like, teach at universities and try to educate people about all the lies and criminality that and not necessarily things in U.S. interest that happen in the U.S. military and in the U.S. political establishment, right? And so there's an extreme lack of adherence to even how the wars are started. But if the wars are formally begun, like in Vietnam and in Korea, and if they are formally decided by a vote in the Congress, right? If the United States government, let me just double check that. Gotta remember that. No AI, please. To declare war, right? The Congress has the power to declare war, grant letters of marque, blah 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 blah. Yeah. So to declare war, it does not have a specific form of what form of legislation must have in order to be considered a declaration of war. But basically, it is supposed to be the Congress that's supposed to declare war. But usually, what happens is that doesn't happen. The Congress just basically doesn't do anything, and the United States military just does whatever it feels like doing. And the U.S. military does a thing, and then the United States military industrial complex, which is run by global imperialists and arms dealers, they basically call up all the senators and representatives that they own, because there's no democracy in the United States, and they say vote for whatever I freaking said. And that's what the Congress does. They just do whatever their highest bidder, because they're all prostitutes, they're all paid actors, tell them to. Right? So, in that sense, right, there is an extreme lack of legitimacy. That's extremist government. The United States government is the most extremist T-word government. Right? It's just run by the most chaotic, unhinged. Right? It's a chaos. The United States government is like Syria, the Syrian occupation. The U.S. government is like HTS. It's a basket case of the most unhinged, most horrific, corrupt, immoral, amoral elements just chaotically scrambling for money and power inside of the U.S. government. That's why things are so backward. Like, there's contradictory things all the time, right? Now, there is ruling class imperial solidarity when it comes to communism, when it comes to decolonization. If an African country is trying to, right, feed, house, clothe its people with its own resources, right, then there's solidarity, right, between Democrats and Republicans. Everybody's like, okay, if this continues, we're not going to have any more money and power to steal from the rest of the world in Washington, D.C., the seat of global imperial capitalist power. So then they have solidarity. But when it comes to other things, sometimes they differ. And so it's a very extreme, chaotic, nonsensical place. It doesn't have, there's no consensus really being built there, particularly. If for example, like, if the desires of an arms contractor, let's say like Lockheed Martin, right, they want to start a war in Taiwan, but let's say Nvidia, Microsoft, or Elon Musk, right, even, they'll say, well, I need to keep getting semiconductors. I need Chinese business, because our semiconductors, our computer technology, basically everything that we have, we need to do business with China. So we can't, Lockheed Martin, I can't let you start a war with China right now, because I still need to sell my Teslas, and I can't make them because the West has no capacity to make anything. We're just a giant financialized propaganda machine with rusting F-35s and broken aircraft carriers. So I need the China, please, actually, right? So that's where there's disagreement, and it's chaotic, because it's like 1 second they'll go, we want to make peace. They'll go, Xi Jinping will meet Joe Biden or some undead lich puppet, GENOCIDER, and this war criminal will meet with Xi Jinping, and it'll be like, we want to make peace now. And then 2 seconds later, right, they'll be like sending aircraft carriers and military aggression, and like and then Xi Jinping and the Chinese will say, I thought you wanted to make peace. And then the United States has no coherent policy, it has an extreme nonsensical policy, because its government is the most extreme, chaotic. It's all extremists, right? And they, like in Syria, which they can't agree. A lot of them actually infight a lot. The United States also can't agree on these things either. So that's why it has this nonsense policy a lot of the time, right? Or it seems schizophrenic. It has, like, it's bipolar or tripolar or quintupolar, right? It'll feel one thing one day, and then the one thing the next day. They'll say the United States government, officially, federal government, has on its website, its State Department says, Taiwan is a part of China. We stand by the Shanghai Communiques and the One China policy, right? And then Nancy Pelosi will violate that One China policy, visit Taiwan, and talk about Taiwan independence and freeing Taiwan from the evil Communist Party of China, right? That's an extreme, nonsensical, chaotic policy. But that's because, they don't really have a coherent policy. They are The United States, if it had a mind, would have extreme mental health disorder. I mean, it has the colonialism, capitalism, and imperialism. These are all mental health disorders. Ethno-supremacism, apartheid concepts, backing Zionist. That's all mental health disorders, really. What they claim that these extremists have, right? So, and then, but when it comes to like invasion, so if the United States does go with the military, it's very obvious that the United States is going in, right? When they formally declare the war, like in Iraq, Vietnam, Korea. But there's also a long secret arm, right? That's camouflaged. It's clandestine. It's not obvious, right? For example, backing the United States, CIA, etc., backing the Mujahideen, right? Backing, and as Graham Fuller of the CIA's elucidated he actually wrote a book about this, right? It's like where he and Sybil Edmonds of the FBI confirmed, right, that all the extremism in Xinjiang, but not just in the Xinjiang region of Western China, but also in Afghanistan, and also throughout the entire Middle East, is the United States sending money, sending weapons, sending training, CIA operatives. Osama bin Laden directly worked with the CIA. He was funded, and his organizations that he worked with were funded and trained by the United States secretly, right? To have a plausibly deniable actors that would benefit the United States by causing chaos, havoc, disruption, and problems. The United States managers, they said they wanted to cause a Vietnam for Russia in Afghanistan in the 70s, like in the mid 20th century, right? This is where Osama bin Laden came from, right? It's from this United States program to use extremism. So by extension, it's actually all Muslim extremism, all Muslim T-word is actually United States. This is Professor Mohamed Morandi he is an Occidental expert. He's this person who studies the West, this horrible barbaric place, and he said that and he correctly points out all Muslim Islamic, whether that's Al Qaeda, ISIS, whether that's Mujahideen, Taliban, all Muslim extremism is actually American extremism. Right, all this Arab T-word, these horrible acts, this is actually Western funded, and because in the Quran, unlike Sam Harris, right, it actually very correctly spells out you must treat people, you must feed, house, clothe, tend to the medical needs of people. Women have to be equal. It actually says all these things. Women's rights are very explicitly stated. They have to have the ability to have financial independence. Women should be able to divorce husbands. Men, you must treat women as sacred. It's actually the opposite of Christianity, Western Christianity. Christianity in that sense is a more extreme religion. And, the Zionist, right, is obviously that kind of, the people that call themselves Jews of that particular bent, that is very extreme relative to the actual Muslim religion. And also in the Muslim world, and in that Central Asia, West Asia, what's called the Middle Eastern realm, Levant, they had freedom of religion, right? They had Christians, Muslims, and Jews coexisting in that region for centuries and millennia, really, including in Palestine, right? And so it's only through extreme lying and extreme brainwashing and extreme mass disinformation, as the CIA director William Casey said, we'll know when the CIA disinformation campaign is complete, when everything the American public believes is false, right? So it's only through that, making people believe the opposite of the truth, that the United States has been able to conduct all of this imperialist, colonialist, GENOCIDAL activity in the world, everywhere in the world. It's about stopping the world from reorienting away from 1492 colonial, Euro barbaristic, mass plunder, slavery, stealing centered colonial capitalism towards win-win cooperative Silk Road It's actually China centered, not only China, but China was the center of this route pre 1492. I think Colonel Wilkerson recently pointed that out. That's ultimately what this is all is about, right? It's not just about one particular lobby, AIPAC or otherwise. It's like that is a useful tool in preventing what is really happening, right? Because that's an important focal point for the disruption of this whole planetary system, and the planetary reorientation away from a colonial capitalist unjust world order for the last 500 years to a win-win cooperative, mutually beneficial, non-capitalistic, right, communist, socialistic trajectory, which is where the world was before that time. And a lot of this is the telluric versus the elastic, or like the oceanic power, right? It was the oceanic power plus weaponized fireworks of the Chinese, and weaponized paper, which is also invented by the Chinese and Asians, and the Koreans also had printing presses before the Europeans. But when the Europeans were able to weaponize the paper to do mass accelerated brainwashing that they stole from the East, when the colonial capitalists were able to weaponize the black powder on a large scale through cannons and mass-produced rifles, the guns, right? And then they got ships, then they had ships that could sail around, right? That's the only way they could start to disrupt this and cut off choke points. For example, the Strait of Malacca, the Red Sea, right, where Yemen is doing many things that are upsetting the global colonial capitalist order. The Red Sea, the Strait of Malacca, transit around India, right? Controlling all these key choke points, it was how they could disrupt and threatening all the regions, plundering North, Central, South America through mass unaliving of Native Americans, mass stealing of land, right? Making filthy rich Spanish, British, French, American. Obviously, the Italians also grew very rich. These are all joint ventures in the beginning, obviously. With Portugal, Italy collaborating, the Dutch, the British collaborating. It's all an imperial order. It's not just one of these countries. The Spanish, French, British, American Empire should all be viewed as like a contiguous, temporally and geographically contiguous imperial colonial capitalist structure. The headquarters simply moves. If the United States, if the United States starts to fall far enough through the cracks, the headquarters will move from DC to somewhere else. I mean, maybe Mumbai, maybe it will go to Davos. Although Europe is a crap hole, so I don't know if they want to do that. Go back to they can move it back to Rome. Although the Pope is upsetting the Pope apparently is saying too many upsetting things, pissing off DC, like Pelosi, but talking about how you have to stop doing GNLCIDE. You have too many traitor popes, so maybe they won't move it back to Rome is where all this really began. So they want to move it back to Rome. They might move it somewhere else, but that is an extremist. So DC is the planetary extreme on a multi-millennia scale. The biggest extremist T word is the entire West, or whatever that whole colonial order, right? That we're talking about. Now, I would argue that the Roman era was a huge explosion of a colonial force that died down during the in the after 300 AD to like 1492, it was a dying down of that imperial structure. In 1492, it re-exploded, or you could say that they're completely different. But what it amounts to is you have a big, huge planetary expansion that happens after that time, and that is an extreme ideology, right? Colonialism, which involves saying that entire peoples, right, African, Asian, Native American, South American peoples, Pacific peoples, these are all subhuman peoples. These are all Amalek in the ZIONIST terms, in order to justify. Which really that is just that the people of Amalek is just a branch of the contiguous imperial structure of colonialism, etc. Right, and it involves an extremist ideology that there's these people based upon like basically arbitrary characteristics are like subhuman. They're not. They're like objects, or they're evil, or they're demonic, or something. That is the Western history. That's the one of the most, if not the most extreme ideologies ever. Right? It has involved the most mass T word ever. It's the most suffering ever inflicted on the world, is that 500 colonial years. And the United States is just the latest perpetrator. Is the latest centrally headquartered global perpetrator of that same system. It's the most extreme system. And has a long arm where it can say, well, we didn't do that. That was Al Qaeda. Or we didn't do that. That was Mujahideen. Oh, we didn't do that. That was we don't know who ISIS is. Yes, Trump is now claiming, it's Obama's fault. Obama started ISIS. The thing is, it doesn't matter if it's Obama or Trump. They all work for the same, set of billionaires and corporations and military arms dealers, right? But the thing is, the United States did fund and arm it, right? In Operation Timber Sycamore, right? The United States secret operations. Again, that's the difference between U.S. direct invasions versus the long secret arm of extremism. Is you can cause mass death and suffering and change policies in a place, change the events, what they call facts on the ground, in a place, and claim it wasn't you that did it, right? So in that sense, like, these actors, right, and all of the New Orleans, Vegas, New Year's, horror perpetrators or suspects, right? They are all United States funded, United States trained, U.S. military. Some of them were recently active duty, right? And it's sometimes they call this blowback. It's called when the United States is perpetrating, because all Islamic Muslim extremism is American extremism. Sometimes it accidentally comes back and hits the United States. That was probably what 9/11, ultimately is. Either way, Osama bin Laden his organizations were funded and backed and supported by the United States. Saudi Arabia is a good friend of the United States. He is a Saudi Arabian person. Right? He actually went to the kind of schools that the United States takes Arab world puppets, like in Jordan, like in Egypt, like in the UAE. The United States, I think Gaddafi said, you Arab Western puppets, you kings, you are all British-made, America supported. Osama bin Laden's family was all close to the Bush family, right? And he personally, like, he actually didn't have, he didn't struggle very much himself personally, right? Because of his position, right? It's like being the descendant of like of a Saudi Arabian king, being a descendant of bin Salman. That would be, you have a cushy life, right? But then he went off and he was trained, and he went off to support and to fight with in Afghanistan, right? I think it was also another connection is I was talking about Africa last week, right? With the Sahel states, and the AES, and the massive, huge anti-colonial sovereignty action that's happening there. They're building large amounts. They're prison breaking themselves, or I think it's maybe 2 weeks ago. In the African region, this is a huge story. This is really one of the biggest stories, right? And it's part of that realigning of the whole earth away from this colonial capitalist Western center, DC, London, Rome, Paris centered nightmare, into a multipolar win-win socialist world. And the AES, one of the original predecessors of the AES in Africa, I'll just put that on the screen for a second, was Thomas Sankara, right, who led the struggle against the European colonialism in Africa. I was talking about, this is in the video, I was talking about modern U.S. slavery and then global slavery as a part of the slavery that happens in U.S. prisons, right? And it's the Thomas Sankara there, but in one of Thomas Sankara's quotes that was coming up recently is that if you are a trained soldier without political education, you're just a criminal, right? If you are a trained soldier right? A soldier without understanding what the historical, right, political reality is, which means you need the truth, not just like a reality. You need like the truth, without understanding what is really happening around you, what has happened before, who controls your country, right? What is the history of your country? What is the history of your country in relation to Europe? Right? Who is your colonizer? If you don't even know who that is, right? This is also why the West doesn't want education for anyone, not their citizens. 56% of Americans can't read above a 6th grade level, and definitely not for the global majority, the global South, Africa, Asia, Latin America. They don't want anyone getting educated. Oh my God, you could be like China, the most educated place in the entire world, pumping out 5 times more STEM students than the United States could even hope to. And in America is running out of Indians and Chinese to trick into coming to the crap hole country called the United States through H-1B visas, right? Vivek is freaking out. Elon and Vivek are like, oh my God, that's what I talked about last week, right? So they don't want educated people, right? But if you don't become an educated soldier, right, then you can easily be misled, right? You're just a young guy with a gun. And then a guy with some money, some other people, an agency, organization, right? That maybe they have a black face, put a black face in a high place. They have some Uncle Tom come in, right? Who got educated in London, got educated in DC, got educated in American University, Harvard, right? Comes back to Africa and tells you, oh, you know what we have to do? We have to fight these people. We have to fight those people, because those people are the extremists, right? Or we have to fight, pick up these arms and fight, and the people you end up fighting are going to be who U.S. wants you to fight, right? And you can easily be misled, right? That's a lot of people that signed up for Mujahideen. A lot of people in the Taliban, people who got into Al Qaeda and these others. The thing is, there is a good reason for people to join and organizations like those, because the United States, their premise is true, right? They would watch Al Jazeera in the 90s and in the noughties, and they would see the United States mass killing, mass unaliving innocent people in Iraq, in Afghanistan, all over the Arab world. They'd be like, these are our people, these are our brothers and sisters. We cannot allow great Satan, that is the United States and its allies, to keep on killing, to keep on destroying. What's happening in the live stream Holocaust 2, right? In GAZA, right? That's radical. I mean, the thing is, it's really what's changed is that the whole world through TikTok is able to see, through a Chinese social media company, the whole planet is able to see what the Arab world could see in the early noughties. Right? Now, some of them choose, I'm going to go fly a plane. I'm going to choose and I'm going to do an attack in a building in Paris, or I'm going to attack a building in America or something, right? Some of them are like, I'm going to go into Iraq and I'm going to fight. Like Professor Morandi actually fought in Iraq, actually against Saddam Hussein, which Saddam Hussein was actually funded and backed by the United States at one point. And he was hit 2 times with chemical weapons. Professor Morandi, the Iranian professor I was speaking of earlier. And so, who is the extremist? Is it extreme to go in and try? Is it extreme to try to stop people, innocent children, and millions of your people, innocent people, from being bombed, slaughtered, starved to death by the United States in Iraq? Is that? I mean, like the United States is already doing an extremist, mentally unwell act. The United States has the biggest mental health disorder. The whole West is just a giant mental health disorder, really. And sitting around behind a keyboard and going, I'm totally fine, even though I work on the freaking Death Star, unaliving millions and millions of people for a global system that's destroying the whole Earth, including its ecology. That's mental. Liberalism, Western normalcy is mental illness, actually. That's the real mental illness, right? So the therapists and psychologists are there to help you return to your mental unwellness of being a liberal or conservative colonial capitalist. Right? They just call that Western rules-based order nowadays. But that is a mental illness. You are like, it's actually omnicidal. It's not just suicidal, it's omnicidal. You're killing everything. What is the definition? I mean, take some Prozac and go back and operate drones to blow up children. That's what Western therapy is. Western therapy is a mental. I have a whole stream about that also. It's called is a mental health centered stream. Western therapy is about putting you back into the unwell mass GNOCIDAL order, and getting you back into the seat of your unhinged lunacy that you work in. If you work in the West, you simply are. You have to, right? Or you, in some, if you're doing well and you're not struggling financially like we are, you are part of that planetary mental illness, and it's also a soul cancer. You know, it's a moral illness. It's everything, right? Where's that one stream I did about that? Because we were talking about these extremists did these acts because of their mental illness, their mental unwellness. Sorry, I'm trying to find them. Yeah, the mental decline. I was talking to one of my friends just on the mental health thing. A lot of Western mental health talk is just nonsense. I had a friend. He's in Britain. You know, he's not a bad guy. He's a good guy. His politics are not very bad, as I understand it. You know, he's against a lot of these horrors that I've just spoken of, right? But his therapist told him, you need to stop paying attention to what's happening in the world. You have to stop. The therapist said, you know, they give him a diagnosis. You have this and that, and you need to stop paying attention to what's happening in PALSTINE. You have to stop trying to stop GNOCIDE. You have to stop getting involved in anything. Don't support any more. That's hurting your mental health. You got to stop doing all that. That is I mean, I'm not literally, that is the line, right? And the thing is, it will cause you less distress. It is true. It will cause you less, like, it is distressing to know that who you work for, your boss, your family, your church, your temple, right? Your Jewish relatives, the synagogue you go to, your university, your college, your school, your government, the job you're thinking of applying to, the tech job, the legal job, the corporate job, finance job, right? The media job, the Hollywood studio you work for. They're all committing mass planetary atrocities. They're all complicit in it. I mean, it doesn't feel good in your mind, right? But I mean, the solution to that, the therapy for that is not to, just pretend like it doesn't exist and just keep killing the world, right? The only real solution in any kind of real sense in a long scale is to actually to refuse and continue to engage in the struggle. Now, I mean, if you actually completely break your mind, you can't do anything. That's also not useful. You have to like pace yourself. But to completely believe you can just disengage and just like pretend it doesn't exist, right? This is where the UK is. It's like UK, Europe, a lot of are in this place because everything is really actually falling apart. And so in some cases, it's like, well, you know, if you completely burn yourself out, it's not necessarily helpful either. If you just like completely become completely catatonic, it's not helpful either. But also, like, if you it is not gonna, like, you will simply be to pretend like all the horrors of imperial colonial capital system, racist system are not there. It will, contrary to what the American Medical Association and what Western Western quote unquote mental health experts and therapists and psychologists will say, you will simply take on another form of arguably more disastrous mental health disorder, right? Which is being in denial, and which is it being in a deep soul loss, and joining the colonial mental illness, right? And it's not just you; you will impact everyone else. Think, how is the mental health of people in the Middle East? If your child has just been blown up to pieces by an American bomb, how is the mental health of that mom, right? Because that's the thing. In the therapy, they tell you about self-care. Only care about yourself, right? Only save yourself. But hyper selfishness or selfish thinking about the self only, that is a mental health disorder. That's why everything else is wrong. That's just capitalism with psychology characteristics. right? So Western therapy is made to isolate you and make you the best colonial capitalist, selfish, Ayn Randian Homo economicus. The purpose of therapy is to make you almost psychopathic, actually, right? It's to make you only think about yourself. All the problems in your life is other people can be dealt with if you just focus on yourself, right? And just only think about yourself, right? It will tell you that you have to either you cause the problems yourself, and you have to just like work harder for the capitalist corporation that is exploiting the crap out of you to fix it, or your mom mistreated you, and this family did that, and you have to get mad at them, and definitely do not try to change the entire system that pays the psychologists and the therapists big fat salaries, or that do not try to change the system, right? All those systems that are actually the real cause, right? The real mental health disorder is kids wake up and they see the whole world is freaking burning. They're seeing all these dead bodies everywhere. That is what is all these dead bodies of innocent children. How can you not wake up and see that every day and not have an extreme bad mental health state? Or how can you not be like feeling very sad or something, feeling angry, sad, all these things? But I mean, that is just a normal response to the mass injustice that you are a part of, right? It's like saying well, the solution to dealing with Nazi Germany is for Germans to just just don't pay attention, just let Hitler do whatever he wants. I mean, you feel better in Nazi Germany sitting around working for the Third Reich, right? The solution to colonialism is just keep profiting from colonialism, and then things will get better eventually. But just prioritize your mental health as a British officer. Prioritize your mental health as a slave catcher. Just keep catching slaves. Don't really think about the slaves you catch too much, and then you'll be fine. Everything will be hunky-dory. The mental health of Imperial stormtroopers is the least priority, actually. The priority of the collectively, anyone who wants to be a moral person, is to make sure. I mean, it's really the more distress that they are forced to endure, the better. And then the world will actually become a better place where you can have full, actual, complete, total mental health and happiness, right? This is the difference between China and the United States. The Chinese have to worry, if I work for a company, am I going to be blowing up children by working for this company, this government? Because they're not committing genocide, unlike what the West, which is lying 24/7 to do, wants you to believe. They're not distressed. Now, the Chinese are distressed by the sad things that are happening, but the Chinese don't have to go to work for a tech company. If you're working at Huawei, you don't have to worry you're blowing up little children with "Where's my daddy?" If you're working at, if you work in the Chinese military, you don't have to be worried you're going to be sent off into a foreign war to blow up children in Afghanistan, blow up hospitals and schools, because the Chinese don't have any foreign interventionist wars. You work for it if you as a soldier. If you work, you don't become an extremist. You work for the Chinese. News. You don't have to worry you're going to be putting out propaganda and spreading lies that's going to justify multi-million person killing wars, because you don't do that, right? That's why I say, if you want to really be you want to live in a normal human civilization, go to communist China. Because there's no possibility in the West. There's only the you will suffer great material and mental health bad conditions. You simply will. In the United States, in the collective West, it's only going to get worse. H-1B visas is about importing people into hell, so that Satan can make more money, exploiting your tech, science, engineering, and math talent to make more AI-powered mass surveillance and drones and death machines. So the solution is actually everyone will leave the United States or stop working at any kind of capacity for the United States or the collective colonial capitalist order. That's what is happening. You actually can go to China. You can stay there for 10 days for free. South Koreans are going to China. Actually, I love this place so much. In fact, I don't want it's actually better in China. As a woman, I'm treated better in China. In South Korea, it's a hyper misogyny backed by the United States, inflamed anti-women disorders, and that's why South Koreans don't have any babies. But so I mean, if you do, I recommend anybody. That's one action you can take to deal with extremism in the world. Coming back to that is to leave the United States and visit China, which is the core of the solution to the entire all of these problems, all the colonial capitalist order. And then you don't have to stay there necessarily, but you learn what a civilization and socialism is actually about. Everybody that's ever gone there, that's why the United States is trying to stop people from doing that, but the United States can't stop it. It's going to keep happening. And if you really want to work, if you want to go to university, if you want to go to school, if you want to go to school, you want to go to university, if you want to fight, like if you want to actually fight for the right cause, and you want to fight for horrible planetary mass unalivers, stealers, pedophiles, the worst people in the world, do colonialism, slave and plunder, kill innocent people. If you don't want to fight as a criminal, as Thomas Sankara said, if you don't want to fight pulling triggers or driving drones as a criminal for the worst people, you got to leave the United States and all their vassals, all the collective West, Europe, NATO, South Korea, Japan, all of them. You got to go to China, somewhere else, and and then you find out what you can do there. But anything in the whole West, you're going to kill innocent people. You're going to do it for the worst reasons possible. You're going to hate yourself, and your suicide rate, you can see this. The suicide rates are 5 times Western soldiers, U.S. soldiers. The suicide rate is 5 times that of the citizens, which is worse than, right? The African, actually the African and the Chinese and also Palestinian suicide rate is not anywhere near the United States. But the Americans take their own life because they know they're the worst. The British take their own life because they're a sinking shithole, cold, wet rock that also knows it's the worst, that gave birth to America. And the whole country is killing itself. Right? Literally, they're running out of food and electricity, and they're just like, we don't really care. We deserve this. It's pathetic. Actually, I was watching videos of British and Scottish people are like, I'm out of the UK. I'm out of it. I'm not coming ever back to this place. I'm going to Hong Kong. I'm going to Chongqing. I'm out of here. No, I'm not coming back. I'm going to Russia. I'm out of the UK. The West is a dying place. It's full of extremists, and you shouldn't want to work for extremists like the United States, Western governments, corporations, and nonprofits. Nonprofits are some of the most extreme, because nonprofits are like the long Camo'd arm of the extremists. Nonprofits like Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, like the Clinton Foundation, they are tax deductible secretly for-profit money laundering schemes for buying off senators and politicians. So there's no, I'm going to do good in a nonprofit. I work for one. Let me tell you, no, it's worse. They're worse than for-profits, because they do all the horror of for-profits, but they do it in ways that make billionaires and the capitalist United States seem better. You actually do double the damage. Working for a nonprofit is like getting the double word score of imperialism in Scrabble. You like double the damage you do. Never do that. Don't work for any Western nonprofit of any kind. You got to leave the entire system. And so they're extreme. The nonprofit is the extreme of the extremists. Corporations are extreme, only caring about the fiduciary responsibility to maximize the return of value, ROI of shareholders, money above people, above planet, above environment, above human rights, above everything, right? That's an extreme position. Capitalism, corporations that are structured around that system, profit above all else, that's an extreme, one of the most extreme positions, right? Nonprofits are like corporations times 10, right? These Western nonprofits are like, do all of that, right? Seek profit above all else. And then also magnify the capacity to keep doing it by convincing people, right? Nonprofits are like corporations, but are also propaganda organizations. They're like corporation plus propaganda, because it makes it seem like the U.S. is a good place. It makes it seem like they're good. It makes Bill and Melinda and Elon, right? Elon just gave $100 million to the Elon. He donated to Elon's charity fund, but it's like he donated to a fund that he runs. So it's like Elon donated to himself, right? So that's why billionaires become philanthropists, right? Like Iron Man, billionaire arms dealer, Playboy, military-industrial complex arms dealer, right? So there, you don't believe, oh, well, what I'll do is I'll do good working for a nonprofit, for a charity. Most Western charities, this is, again, ways to launder money back into the pockets of the rich and pretend to solve problems to keep people who have consciousnesses in the West believing there's hope there. That's what Bernie Sanders' job is as well. So to make it seem like an AOC, right? Becoming an AOC or Bernie is one of the worst. Bernie and AOC is like cancer times a trillion, right? Because it just perpetuates the system longer and longer. That's the worst thing possible. No, you have to completely exit the entire system. There's no possible hope in that. And people believing, the longer that people refuse to accept that and just, well, I'll change. I will change the United States. I'll become a U.S. representative and I'll change it from the inside. The more people believe that, the longer the extremism will persist. I'll work for Google and I'll change it from the inside. I'll stop it from, I mean, there's people that do some work there, right? And ideally, hopefully, unionization and corporatization would be a good thing, but it's also more arguable that, like, a lot of people, is to start completely new organizations or to completely just not work for them, right? And just exit the entire U.S. and all of its vassals. It's especially if you're highly talented, don't work for any tech company, don't work for any science, don't work for an AI company, don't work for NVIDIA, don't work for any of that. If you, space, aeronautics, bio, nano, don't work for any Western anything. You got to get out of there, right? If there's any hope, right? If there's any hope for, even if you could make a change, you're going to give them so much. You're going to give, right, the extremists so much of your life, of your energy before you, and then I'll eventually somewhere I might start a union or I might join part of that union, right? But you've already developed how much code? How many children have you already unalived? How much global capitalism, how much billions of dollars have you helped? Trillions of dollars of Africa, Asia, and Latin America's resources and produce have you helped to steal before you even started changing from the inside? The best thing you could do is just completely exit it. That might, so now speaking, that might seem like an extreme position, but like that's just the reality. Now that's actually the moderate position. The extreme, again, the mainstream, what is supposed to be, because if we talk about going back to that concept of extremism, right? If extremism is supposed to be, right? If extremism is supposed to be the most furthest elements, right? The things that are like believing that there should be no ethnic minorities in your country is like a radical compared to we shouldn't give affirmative action or extra support to minorities. Is so if you but the thing is in the global sense, right? Those ideologies, systems, and beliefs, and real interests and organizations and governments and non-government organizations in the United States and the West that are claimed to be moderate, central, right? They're very they're very big tent, right? They represent the majority, right? They're not extreme, right? But the West is itself the most extreme system ever created. That colonial, capitalist, imperialist, and whatever facade it wraps itself in is the most extremist agglomeration of ideologies and systems, interests, and economic and political reality. All of it together is the most extreme thing ever. So the moderate position, right? Really, the moderate position is to not be a part of it at all. Or if you can't not be a part of it at all, it is to, if you for some reason you are inside it already and you can't, for whatever reason you can't or whatever won't get out, is to fight it from the inside. Right? So to be called a quote unquote radical in the US or the West. Now, obviously, if you become a radical far right, that's something else. Then you're extreme of the extreme. But if you are quote unquote a radical and they call you something like a radical left in the United States, that is actually just a moderate position to actually support Black and Indigenous people of color and actual mutual aid organizations, anti-capitalist organizations of various kinds in the United States. That is just the basic moderate position. That is the normal human. That is a mentally well position. That is a normal human civilizational position, as opposed to a perverted, completely warped, distorted, extreme U.S. liberal or conservative, neoliberal or neoconservative ideology. Okay, let me look at this. Oh, my stream internet appears to have my stream monitoring, chat monitoring internet appears to have died. Let me just try to restart it. And we will finish up soon. That's a good place to stop that snowball I was on. Okay. Oops, sorry. What has become of you? My internet connection is going through extreme levels, very extreme, radical levels of dysfunction at this moment. It is refusing to follow orders. Is this internet still on? Let me just check that. Okay, let me not check that. Okay, it looks like this one's on. Okay, anyways, so Extremists, Extremities, New Orleans, Vegas, and the Long Camel Arm. So let me just finish this up. So, I didn't go into a lot of the details. You can learn about the details of who exactly did what. One thing is that we cannot, again, right, because we have extreme liars. We have extremist liars in the police, federal government, all the United States authorities. Don't trust anything that they're saying. Don't take anything they say at the drop of a hat, at their word. Whatever they're saying, especially when it comes to who is doing terrorist acts, it's all being spun at all times. They're trying to do another 9/11, as I was referring to earlier. So we have to really not give it. We have to take all of that with many grains of salt. There's something else I wanted to point out. Let me see. Okay. No, I think it was yeah. What do they all have in common? Yeah. So they're all. So authorities have identified the driver in New Orleans attack as Shamsuddin Jabbar, U.S. citizen. His truck had allegedly crossed Eagle Pass, Texas 2 days ago and had an ISIS flag on the back of his truck. They covered up on the scene. They're probing the ISIS link to New Orleans attack. So the thing is that ISIS was funded and supported by the United States. The United States is currently funding and supporting a member of ISIS, right? Who is al-Jolani, right? That is the new leader. These people, these were just invaders. He was at the front of the U.S. Israel Turkey supported HTS, which is rebranded Al Qaeda, right? They're just rebranded Al Qaeda. It was Al Nusra. They've had many names, and different sects within it. But Jolani was literally, he worked as basically Al Qaeda in Syria. He's one of the top leaders there. Extremists. They killed people who were not Muslim. They killed people who were Christian. They killed people who were beheading them, chopping their heads off, shooting them, like point blank, shooting them. Like the Syrian regime is sending out video of them beating innocent people for their religion. They kill women if they didn't practice strict extreme versions, U.S. constructed versions of Islam, U.S. and British extreme versions of the Quran, right? That it's not anything to do with the actual Islam of that area. And so that he is an extremist, this Jolani, and not just Jolani, all of his people behind him. right? They came with him. This video, they like isn't real. They share videos of themselves and committing the most heinous acts. They relish it. Like, look at these Christians we just slaughtered for because they're infidel. They're the wrong religion. You know, look at these. You know, they banned women from being in the government. They kicked. There were women judges in Syria, right? Assad was the worst. He's so bad on the women's rights and LGBTQ plus rights. That was who the United States, were saying he has to go. He's a horrible authoritarian dictator. He's so oppressive. This guy they brought in, he has barred all women in courts as judges. He's barred women from positions in government. Right? He has historically and continues to abuse and beat and kill women that don't follow a patriarchal version, a very strict far right version of Islam, as I already said. Right? He has done photo ops with Christians to pretend. And the thing is, the United States, CNN, European media, they all have been saying he's the best. They're trying to rebrand him, right? The Times are saying, oh, he is a reformed. He's a reformed Al Qaeda. Remember, if you lived through the noughties, you were like, what is happening? A lot of people are like, I can't believe this, right? Because the United States spent billions of dollars on CNN every day talking about we're going to get Osama, we're going to get Al Qaeda, we're going to get Al Qaeda. The United States spent $1 trillion hunting Al Qaeda in Afghanistan for 20 years. 20 years. It just recently wrapped up a few years ago. They spent 20 years fighting Al Qaeda. And the CNN and the New York Times and MSNBC, the whole Western world, the government, Germany, Baerbock is over there shaking this guy's hand. When the United States spent, like, the thing is, there are American soldiers that are like, I don't believe in what I did, but I just went to Afghanistan. My buddies got their legs blown up. I was in Iraq. We were supposed to be fighting Al Qaeda. Like, people I know died fighting Al Qaeda. Like, I did horrible things. But I thought we were trying to get Al Qaeda or something. Right? And many American soldiers, including like Mike Preisner, Abby Martin's actual American journalist, said, like, I never actually fought an enemy when I was in Iraq. Or, it was Spencer Rapone, who is a former Afghanistan Army Ranger. He was an Army Ranger deployed in Afghanistan. He said, I never found a single enemy of the United States while I was there. I was mostly just terrorizing and bullying innocent people in Afghanistan, right? But it's kind of like, occasionally they did act. The Taliban actually offered to give up, and they said, we will work and we'll give you Al Qaeda if you can prove that they're actually doing these horrible things. And the United States said, no, we don't actually want Al Qaeda. The U.S. government said, they declined the deal because the United States never wanted Al Qaeda. They never wanted to catch and stop Al Qaeda. They wanted to go into all of these countries and destroy them and steal all the resources and grow poppy to make heroin to sell so the United States could fund more dirty operations for the CIA. 80% of global opium and narcotics was coming out of Afghanistan for a while. Now the U.S. isn't there, Afghanistan is growing food and building women cooperation with the Chinese support to Afghanistan has replaced heroin, narcotics under U.S. occupation and poverty with growth and with solar panels and electric vehicle production and food production with the China's support. Now the U.S. is trying to cause more problems with the Pakistan-Afghanistan border now, but by and large they have done a lot better since the United States is not there. Did they ever catch Al Qaeda? They didn't catch anything. The United States never cared about catching Al Qaeda. The United States still doesn't care about catching Al Qaeda. The United States has put Al Qaeda in place and is helping them chop women's and Christians and ethnic minorities' heads off. The Baerbock was just there. The thing is, that Baerbock is the U.S. imperialist weapons arms dealer plant in Europe. One of them. She's like this horrible NATO puppet in which is a U.S. puppet in Europe. She just went to Syria, and that Jolani, he refused to shake her hand. He shook the second in like another German male politician, but the Jolani, shook the male politician's hand, he refused to shake her hand. So much for women's rights, so much for progressive, reformed Al Qaeda. They have he, him pronouns under it, right? On CNN and on the Western media. He refused to even, never mind gender inequality and LGBTQ plus and gender acceptance. The head of the United States, Western, CNN, MSNBC, Western supported head of Syria, right? Not only does he not support LGBTQ plus equality, really, he doesn't even accept women as being worthy of shaking his hand. He just outright refused to even shake her hand. I mean, obviously that is not the case with Assad. Obviously, that's not the case of the any of these other leaders. But he refused to shake the German leader's hand. Not because she's a war criminal complicit in all kind of imperialist crimes. He is too. No, but because he actually he does. But part of it is, he himself is just a criminal mercenary thug, and he probably does believe extreme things. He certainly does. But like he can't be seen by his fellow anti-women, anti-LGBTQ plus, anti-Christian, U.S. created, U.S. fake version of Islam extremist beliefs. He can't let his fellow HTS Al-Qaeda members see himself being weak by being seen to shake women's hand. So anyway, I just thought that was a whole other thing. So that's an extreme view that women can't be judges, right? The United States is supporting this guy, right? The U.S. is supporting the most extreme views of this person. Women can't be judges. If you're Christian, you deserve to die. It's interesting because they don't really want the American Christians to figure this out as much as possible, because it would be very bad for their it would be very bad for their ability to recruit Christians into the U.S. military if they find out that America's supported leaders are actively killing people because they're Christian. Anyways, okay, so but that's that. Let's see. Yeah, and so the Tesla Cybertruck bomb suspect was I didn't say his name, but it's Matthew Livelsberger, 37, Colorado Springs. Presumably, the driver he served in the U.S. military for 19 years, believed to be an intelligence manager with experience in special forces. So, this is the United States. Either it's the United States accidentally blowing itself up in the Cybertruck attack at the Trump Hotel, or it's the United States intentionally blowing itself up because this guy literally is the U.S. military. This is why this is like a repeat of the 2000s, but it just partially what it is that we, and I include myself in this, we're able to see more. They're not able to hide as much of their lies as they would like to. They're not able to hide the truth. I'm sorry, as much as they would like to, as they could in the 2000s. There was no Twitter. There was definitely no TikTok. There's no social media. Internet was much smaller. Most people still got news from CNN and some kind of American Western newspaper or TV station. There's very little internet outlets in 2000, 2001. Today, we have way more access to global media. The United States, again, across the board is way less powerful. So this is why this, only if you're like a Facebook Gen X boomer liberal and some conservatives would you accept the narratives they're spinning. Like, oh, we got to go back in Afghanistan and oh my gosh, we got to go back into Iran and we got to go back in the Middle East and invade it again. That's what they want to do, is they want to invade Iran, right? They want to do it. This is the 2001 weapons of mass destruction. 9/11 means we got to invade the entire Middle East again. But this time what they want to do is they want to send the U.S. military into Iran, which is like unhinged, ridiculous, failed, doomed. I mean, this is the weak, broken U.S. empire thinking it can, and it's unhinged, chaotic, neuron lacking, D.C., Brussels, Jerusalem leaders not realizing how weak they are now. They're not going to be able to do anything. The U.S. can't beat Yemen. The U.S. and its allies cannot beat Yemen. They're not going to beat Iran. They could maybe try to cause some chaos, but it's ridiculous. The math does not work out. They could try to shoot some kind of attack. If they actually attack Iran, Iran could destroy the entire global gasoline infrastructure. The global majority, China, has already producing all of the world's electronic renewable technology and cars. It'll be the stupidest thing ever. The United States massively still relies on fossil fuel. It's just the stupidest possible thing you could ever do. All it would do is ensure the absolute decimation of the United States if they try to invade Iran. Iran has the capacity with underground missiles to basically destroy every single and set on fire all of the gas coming out of Saudi Arabia, UAE, that whole region. All those UAE puppet Arab world, which is where huge quantities of the global fossil fuel comes from, right? They don't have the ability to resist. They can't stop Yemen. They definitely can't stop Iran, right? Yemen is the poorest Arab country that is hypersonic missiles are just blasting past the U.S. and Israel's Iron Dome. The THAAD is nothing, right? So anyway, but that's in the geopolitical military standpoint. What the U.S. if the U.S. thinks that it can use these, whether intentional, whether the United States or some agency, U.S. agency, funded and supported and gave the green light for this actions to happen, right? Whether 9/11 was orchestrated directly by the United States or it was just U.S. Former U.S. agents, former U.S. funded organizations doing something the U.S. didn't directly order, but either way, they were created and funded. Al Qaeda was created and funded by the United States. So whether the Tesla Cybertruck guy, just suddenly did something U.S. didn't see coming, or the U.S. said go do it, they can't do the 2000s again because the United States is not 2000s United States. You know what I'm saying? They might still try, and that would be bad, but not that the United States cares what I think they should do. But I just want to point out that if they try to do that, then these are two outcomes, and this is definitely, we can see that there's more narrative about that. Okay, let me finish up by saying, speaking of extremists, I made a whole thread that you probably have seen, but there's some updates on this. The thread about Hawaii's. So speaking of extremists, just in case you don't know, in Hawaii history, the U.S. banned Hawaiian. As an extreme move was when the U.S. banned Hawaiian language, overthrew our country in Hawaii, let us die in Maui fires, devastated our universal health care, illegally occupies Hawaii to this day. It was extreme was when the U.S. broke my mom's hands in school for speaking Hawaiian in school. That was an extreme act. That was very much like the U.S. supported Jolani in Syria, right? Stopping people from practicing their culture through violence. That's what the U.S. did in Hawaii in the 1980s, where they still did that. They still physically punished children for speaking Hawaiian in school. The U.S. still punishes children for speaking Hawaiian in school to this day. It's not physically. Usually. Hawaii is, this is all, that thread, but some updates to that are that South Korea is also, right? Speaking of extremism, the United States is an extremist in South Korea. It is an illegal colony. It's a legal occupation with brainwashing and cannon fodderization, as we have in Hawaii. The population is used as an imperial capitalist battering ram against China and North Korea. Well, North Korea is just in the front on the pathway to Beijing and into the Chinese government. UN and South Korea think that the U.S., which is to say the communist, socialist world leading organization, South Korean think that U.S. Supreme Court decisions apply to them. So, this is extremist brainwashing, right? This is an extreme position. How can South Korea use the U.S. Supreme Court decisions, right? It's because the United States diseducates. Did you know in South Korea you're forced to worship the Israel flag? Children, young South Korean children have to wave the Israeli flag around and celebrate it, right? That's not the choice of the South Korea. That doesn't make any sense at all. Except that South Korea is simply a completely illegitimate colonial puppet organization, to the point that the head of South Korea doesn't even know his own rules, his own government. He's just a criminal thug that the United States installed. He wanted to institute martial law because the United States knows that the U.S. wants martial law to happen. The United States asked their puppet, illegitimate, non-democratic, completely. This is an actual dictatorship. He wanted to. Assad was a dictatorship, right? Oh, Iran has an authoritarian dictatorship. South Korea actually has a guy who is trying to install literal dictatorship, who has gone against the law, who is running away from the law. South Korea, Taiwan, all the U.S. puppets, Japan, these are the actual criminal dictatorships. And the dictator is a puppet there from the United States. Right? He actually, he's also an idiot. Like, he's an idiot because the United States is an idiot. Or they want him to be an idiot. It's probably both. Right? They're lawless people that make up nonsense. Like, I can cite the U.S. Supreme Court rulings to apply to me. It's pathetic. But this guy has literally has insurrection charge. He's hiding in a bunker. You know what? Kim Jong-un is not hiding in a bunker trying to defy his own people. It's the South Korean government that everything that they say about North Korea is all South Korea. It's a total projection. All the authoritarian dictatorship, people are hungry and starving, and there's all these problems. Everything is about what South Korea has done. Mass murder their own people. South Korea has murdered 100,000 of their own people in one sitting. In 1 week, they've done that because the United States wanted it to happen to prevent what? Spread of communism, to prevent decolonization. So that's extreme. That's really extremist. That's so extreme. Very extreme viewpoint. That is U.S. extremism in Asia. Is a South Korea. That's what it is. Work of building food, housing, energy, education, and political economic. So resisting it is also in Hawaii. We are also have a phase of efforts at NOH that will be training community in house building and invasive trees, utilizing wood to get to a stage we can distribute kits to have enough wood to build housing structures and fill in the gaps, because Hawaiians, we have the most unhoused homeless population of any demographic per capita in the U.S. in the so-called fake U.S. state of Hawaii. So we're trying to work on that, and that's part of resisting U.S. extremism in Hawaii. Speaking of extreme puppets, right? The U.S. installed Juan Guaido, and less than 20% knew who he was as president of Venezuela. Similar to how the U.S. installed illegitimate puppets like Sanford B. Dole in Hawaii against the Democratic vote of 90% of us Hawaiians. Again, so Sanford B. Dole had less than 5% support. That's an extreme, again, extreme margins. That was most Hawaiians did not want to be a colony of the United States, right? Because our lives got way worse after the U.S. showed up. And the United States supported the extremist, Dole, who cooed Hawaii and made us into a slave plantation selling pineapples and ghettoized or impoverished and stole and burned all of our houses and businesses in Chinatown, in Hawaii, in Kalihi, Palama. So that was an extremist, like Juan Guaido, who also, Dole had 5% of the vote. Nobody wanted that guy. Nobody wanted the U.S. Guaido, only 20% of the population knew who the hell this guy was, and he got way less than 50% of the vote. Way less. And the U.S. just said, you're president of Venezuela. Also an extremist position. Extremist position. His people also were guilty of setting people on fire and saying, that's what you get, black person. They, like Juan Guaido's people would set African or like people that are identified racialized as black in Venezuela. They would set them on fire. Literal U.S. funded extremists. They also use fireworks like they used in the Cybertruck, and also the U.S. used in Georgia and Romania, shooting mass fireworks at the government buildings. Speaking of extremism. So they would use fireworks, they would use gasoline, they would use all kind of weapons. They would just set people on fire in Venezuela to scare and to threaten them. The U.S. supported puppets people in order, because they said we want a white Venezuela. I mean, he's not even white, but I mean it's people. It's what counts as white is different in that than in North America. But like they wanted to get rid of the African and indigenous that were taking Venezuela from colonizer capitalist families. Nobody knew who Juan Guaido was. U.S. put him into power. That was an extremist thing to do. Very extremist. And lastly, right, on the most fighting imperial narratives in the face of self-destructive social media. So extremists in AI, right? We have, because the world is seeing, right, and learning from people like myself, right, non-white, global diverse populations, right, African people, Asian, indigenous people, from in the U.S. and around the world. So they're using generative AI or AI generated profiles in order to have basically fake black queer women and minority women. They're trying to make like this is the modern version of the comprador African government official. This is like the AI generated digital 2020s Kamala Harris, right? Which is about trying to get black women to support white supremacist capitalist colonialist empire, right? But this is the AI, it's like the AOC, but like an AI generated. Oh yeah, girl, we're all gonna vote for that Democrats. Yeah, we gotta cancel this. We gotta cancel this left because we just all gotta get as a black queer woman, I would just like to say that something. They're trying to they literally fed in black queer women's or non-white women's posts and faces and tried to create an artificial profile so they can try to use AI generated social media accounts and fake people online and accounts to do the opposite of what I do, or the opposite of what actual black radical women might actually do, which is to say, hey, this is a bunch of bullshit. We got to stop doing this colonial capitalist, sexist, racist, etc. Kyriarchal nonsense, right? And they're trying to do this. No, you know what the best thing is, girl? We gotta all stand up for the U.S. military, girl. That's what we gotta do now. We gotta clap back. We gotta cancel Iran. That's the, as a black queer woman, we have to reduce harm by, we have to help our mental health and, get reparations by blowing up Russia and China. That's like literally what this profile was made to do. I don't know if that's gonna work. Also, this profile is generating as much is using as much electricity and water as an entire neighborhood in America. So it's a waste of power to do that. I don't know if it's gonna work at all. It's really, I mean, we have to keep an eye on that kind of stuff. But because a lot of boomer and Gen Xers have difficulty figuring out what is Gen AI, obviously. So then what they want to do is try to manipulate as much as they can with this. Now, I don't think it's going to really succeed because at the end of the day, people are not looking for people. I mean, real people that have any kind of real intelligence and real savvy in this world nowadays, they're not just looking for some random face that's black that will say things. Like they look at the history, right? This is a bunch of white rich guys that don't understand how women and queer and indigenous and global anti-colonial colonized people's forces world works, right? You don't just look at somebody's face and go, oh, that looks like a black person, read a bio and then believe what they say. I mean, you look at their history, you look at the actual history, look at where did this person come from, what is their, right? I mean, this is why the world is getting better. I mean, is making improvements. Is because people are actually thinking more actually, rationally, empirically, and dialectically. I mean, some of them, not a lot of the Western mainstream ones, definitely not boomers and Gen Xers, but some people are learning actually how to do that thinking. And so it's going to work on people who are already susceptible to corporate media, I think. People are susceptible to Western uncritical, irrational, unempirical brainwashing. But to anybody who is of any kind of reasonably savvy, educated, dialectical mind, it's not going to work because we're like, well, where did this person come from? Let me check this with other people. I mean, nobody knows who. If everyone's like, hey, nobody knows who this lady is. She's kind of what is this creepy smile? What is she saying? Why is she saying all this stuff about we all got to sign up for the military? Or why is she saying we all got to go get our bag in Wall Street or something, right? We all got to go work for big tech, AI generating surveillance state, big tech companies in America. Hey girl, we all got to get up inside that H-1B visa. Everyone in India and China, let's all migrate to America. Let's all build let's make America woke by building a lot of missiles and guns and AI drone swarms let's clap back China, girl. Let's get it. Like people be like, what the hell are you even what? But that's what they're trying to do with these AI. So anyway, we'll keep an eye on that. Okay. I apologize. I can't see your YouTube chat because my my chat computer broke. What is up, Grant and Nicola Bendo? Thanks for dropping in. Yeah, I gotta clock out because my chat computer broke. Okay, anyways, let me finish up. It's 2:00. Okay. Okay. Last little thing I want to say before we go. Yeah. So that. Oh yeah. Another thing is yeah. So see, speaking of extremists, right? So capitalism itself is an extreme perspective. Capitalist U.S. arms genocide doer. Genocide doers. Communist China arms genocide stoppers. Okay, so very important to remember in the global sense. Yemen has repeatedly rejected a U.S. proposal to negotiate an end to its attack on isn't real Ansar Allah-led government, or that's what they call the Houthis sometimes, in Sana'a pledges to continue its support for the people of Gaza as they face genocide at hands of isn't real. Yemen refuses to negotiate on ending its blockade in the Red Sea. In addition to their drone and missile attacks against the entity, this comes amidst an escalation in the number of bombings carried out throughout their nation by U.S. And all of U.S.'s little buddies, Israel and the U.K., which have devastated civilian infrastructure. Yemen, and also breaking at the same time, Yemen Houthis receive advanced components for ballistic and cruise missiles from China. So, Yemen is the only country in the world that has directly fought as a country, it's fought directly all of the genocide doer and all their backers. They're fighting the U.S., they're fighting the UK, they fought Prosperity Guardian, that was U.S., UK, France, Australia, Spain, Italy. They fought all of them. Canada. They fought every single one of them. And Yemen is completely undefeated. There's nothing that they can do. There's nothing that the U.S. and the allies can do. They're unstoppable. Yemen has been shooting these hypersonic missiles. They go at Mach 8. They are uninterceptable. They are blowing up infrastructure. They're blowing up military bases. They're blowing up Mossad, HQ. They're blowing everything up that they want. They blew up the fake state in Middle East airport. Yemen is unstoppable. The U.S. doesn't want, and U.S. and its little pet genocide doer don't want anybody to know that. But that's why you should spread it. To tell everybody, guess what? The U.S. is weak paper tiger, weak sauce. The U.S. and all of his friends and the imperialists, they can't do anything to stop Yemen. If Americans figure out, wow, we can't do crap, what are we talking about attacking Iran for? Yemen is like, it's like a tiny, they're very powerful people, but it's not Iran. Iran is way bigger and more powerful than that. And Iran also is directly allied with Russia. So if U.S. attacks Iran, the U.S. will be at war with Russia. And so get ready to have nuclear craters where New York used to be. Anywhere in America, get ready to die in nuclear fallout and starve to death with radioactive corn. If you don't get cooked if you're not part of the 300 million Americans that die in the first 48 hours, as every one of the biggest nuclear arsenal in the world gets shot at you, get ready to die shortly after that. Because if you attack Iran, you actually technically are tackling Russia. Now, people say, well, Russia wouldn't attack. Americans should know that, because Americans should be doing everything they can to stop the United States from doing any more unhinged things. In Ukraine, they already lost Ukraine, or in Iran. Iran supported attacks they're trying to use New Orleans. They're trying to use all these U.S. funded military trained actors to say, as like a new 9/11, to say, oh, now we gotta go in the Middle East. Now we gotta go get the bad guys in Iran. If you go in Iran, not only will you lose the whole global, at minimum, the U.S. economy will be cooked, because the U.S. gas, all the Middle East gas price, all the Middle East gas production will be destroyed, which is to say, you get ready to pay $30 a gallon for gas if you have any. If you think your economy sucks now, if you go to war with Iran, your economy is absolutely dead. It will hurt everybody. China will be hurt the least. China and Russia, Eurasia will be hurt the least, because they are the fastest on the track of renewables. But if you think you're having a hard time now, if the West lets itself gets sucked by its leaders into some ridiculous Iran war, you're completely fucking toast. If you don't get nuked first, as Jeffrey Sachs, Scott Ritter, maybe I'll point out, the U.S. is currently, you're just playing, at this point where the Biden is on the way out, they're at their most unhinged. The whole Western leadership, especially the Blinken, Newland, Biden ghoul set of unhinged, neocons, straight out of the, unhinged Zionists and neocons. These people are constantly threatening with nuclear war. They're constantly trying to almost teetering on the edge of that all the time, especially now. But also, I mean, on a basics, in a basic sense, Yemen is actually supported. This is a little bit more of a. It's not necessarily. It's not saying that China is quote unquote picking sides, but China has said we're not going to supply gallium, antimony, and many components. Right, we're not going. All U.S. contractors, weapons contractors, Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, Boeing, right? They're all being sanctioned. They're not going to get any more business with China, which means they're screwed. It's because they have directly sold weapons and are doing contracts with Taiwan. So that is, so in that sense, China is still just that is just a direct response to U.S. intervention. That's because U.S. is they're basically acts of war. So China's responses are responses to that. But also, people should keep in mind that China is directly supporting the only country that is directly fighting, as a whole country is directly fighting. Because Hezbollah is an organization that has fought against, in support of Palestine. But Hezbollah is a part of, there's the greater Lebanon is not fully on board with all of that. There's many Lebanese, many people in Lebanon and entities in Lebanon. The government, the formal government is not completely going into and attacking in support of Palestine. But Yemen is like, we will risk anything and everything. Yemen actually says we hope you escalate further. They're like, let's have a world war so that we can get rid of you finally. We'll get rid of your imperialism and we'll get rid of your genocide finally. So, and remember that China is the one that is helping. It's not the United States. U.S. is trying to stop that. And then directly related to that, speaking of AI, artificial intelligence, as I said, right, controlling the narrative of who is the extremist and who is not. That is where the real struggle happens, right? The informational narrative war, which involves tech, social media, the most advanced tech, and now AI as well. China just released an open source AI platform that is 10 times better than all American AI, and it's cheaper and it's free. So the U.S. AI companies are all scrambling with that. Also, when China does use AI, it uses it for better things. Like, for example, they use AI to cure diseases, to help increase food production, to better transportation, to undesertify the entire desertified wasteland area, to make the world greener and solve climate change. That's what they use AI for in China, for the most part. They do use some text large language machines, but it's to do very basic rote stuff, not to generate fake freaking profiles. The U.S. is using, Mark Zuckerberg and the U.S. is using AI to make fake black women, to brainwash people into doing more genocidal wars and more imperialism, right? China is using AI to actually cure diseases and like solve climate change. So that's because you have a capitalist crap hole system, and the capitalist U.S. censors pro Palestine speech. Communist China and TikTok refused to. So actually, it's been revealed that TikTok was told they had to stop allowing pro-Palestine speech on their platform, and TikTok refused. Right? On Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, they've been censoring all over the place. You know this. That's why we got to use watermelon, right? But the TikTok said that we and the Chinese government also did. We're not gonna. So China is more free speech than the U.S. And it's certainly more free. I mean, the important speech. I mean, we don't need more Nazi speech, but that's what the U.S. loves, that stuff. We don't need more hate. We don't need more hate speech. I mean, a lot of advertisers don't like it, but Elon don't care. Zuckerberg don't care. They need the far right. That's how they get all these wars done, is with all of their U.S.-backed extremists around the world. In Central South America, Al Qaeda, extremists in Ukraine, the Banderites, and the Nazi Germany in World War II. So the U.S. free speech means extreme liberal and extreme conservative and extreme fascist speech, right? And then if you say anything actually useful and beneficial and good in the world, then you get crushed, censored. But in China, they said no. We need the pro-Palestine speech. We cannot be. There's a startling proposition that there should be no judicial scrutiny of a law shuttering a speech platform used by 170 million Americans would mean Congress would ban petitioners from operating TikTok explicitly because they refuse to censor views Congress disfavors or promote views it likes. Okay, so the U.S. government said you have to stop letting people stop the Holocaust through speech. And the Chinese company said, no, we're going to let people say the truth. Freedom of speech. First, the Chinese and TikTok said the First Amendment matters. And the U.S. government, they said, no, get rid of the First Amendment. So just remember, China is more free speech. China is more, for the general welfare. And anytime the U.S. tries to ever bring up again, oh, we need a free speech, free press, blah, 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 blah. Just remember this. That is why they want to get rid of TikTok. Because there's too much free speech on it. Okay, that is an extremely good view to let this happen. Anyways, that is an extremely good. Maybe it's an extremist view to let people talk about the most heinous crimes in the world, right? Maybe that's an extreme view. But if that is, I guess we have to support it. Okay. Anyways, that's the end. Thank you for watching. You can help us out at ko-fi.com/silverspook. Give us a direct one-time donation. And if you want to help us in an ongoing method, you can also help us out at patreon.com/Neofeud to keep doing this educational work as best as we can manage to do it. And you can also help us out through direct support on patreon.com/Neofeud. And of course, you can also help us out and also get access to behind the scenes of what we're working on. I put on lots of panels and events. I'm trying to do more of them. Like, for example, I did the recent Silver Spook Christmas party with a bunch of our friends, Big Teal, Zilla Monogatsu, Neuro Riot. We have Ocean Lonnie, who's a native Pacific North Marianas person in U.S. occupied Saipan, U.S. illegal territory of Saipan, and you can check that out. On this, I think I'm gonna upload it to YouTube channel soon. It's not there yet. Also, I did a podcast with my game dev friend James Durden, which works on cyberpunk adjacent science fictional adventure games with me, and also we worked on the Silver Spook Cooperative Garden and growing more food for ourselves to be sustainable here in Hawaii against extremist United States. And of course, you can also that's some Christmas related stuff that we did, and this is some scenes from Neofeud 2 that I'm almost done with. I'm almost done with it, very close to being done, not quite done. So thank you for everybody who has supported us. Consider joining them. You get access to the Silver Spook Discord and the Silver Spook University, which is all Silver Spook University is unlike the extremist American and Western universities that support GENOCIDE in the watermelon place, all of them. Silver Spook University, you can help us. You can get decolonized education much cheaper. And also, if you can't go to Chinese university, go to Silver Spook University. You can't go to Tsinghua, go to Silver Spook University. Decolonized history, current struggles, imagined futures, culture analysis from a native Hawaiian activist, educator, science fiction writer perspective. All the content I've produced in all the categories: economics, history, politics, race and gender focused, Africa, Asia, Latin America, Hawaii focused, tech and science, AI, etc. focused. And it's basically all the videos and all the text ever categorized by topics. I apologize. I cannot give you an accredited United States university degree, but the United States should lose its accreditation as a country. So, a U.S. accreditation just means that you support global imperialism and colonialism and mass suffering. That's what if your university is officially validated by the U.S. or Canada, it's a criminal organization. So, anyways, Neofeud is a cyberpunk adventure game that is not on sale right now, but it does. I spent 2.5 years working on this game, and it does support everything that we do here. So consider wishlisting it if you can't afford it right now. And also, there's of course Neofeud on itch.io for Windows and for Macs and for Linux that does also support everything that we do here. And it's also a game that is maximum revenue comes to us if you buy it on itch. There's also Decolonators and Digistar, several other games. Woman is a book by Holly, who was raised in right-wing evangelical Protestant Christianity, and it's a book that is also it's from Mary's perspective within the Bible, and it critiques right-wing Christian culture. And of course, there is Silver Spook Games at wandering.shop, at Silver Spook Games, at mastodon.social, where you can follow us on Mastodon. You can follow on Blue Sky at silverspookgames.bsky.social, and or at silverspookguy.bsky.social on the Blue Sky. On Twitter, you can follow at silverspookguy, at silverspookgames minus the E in silver for the games related stuff. You can also follow at Holly. At Allergic to Blue to follow Holly, who is, of course, writer, producer, moderator here at the Silver Spook Cooperative, married to myself, parent of 2, linebacker, free Hawaii, and let's mask up, because guess what? The extreme pandemic is not over yet, so please mask up for all of us, all of our comrades, so that we can all be safe from that. And anyways, thank you, everybody, for watching. Please... we do not condone any extremist activities like United States government and military activity, or Europe or Canada or Australia. We do not support Canada extremism against Indigenous peoples and First Nations oppression in residential schools. We don't support South Korean extremism in South Korea through the illegitimate government, and we definitely don't support any of those. So I just want, disclaimer: we don't support any of this extremism of the U.S. government. I just want to say that we don't support any. No Larry Ellison extremism. He's extremist, illegally occupying Lanai in Hawaii, talking about mass surveillance using AI and drones. We don't support U.S. corporation extremism. Okay, I just want to say we don't support that. Thanks to all the Patreon patrons. And also, have a good day. Have a good rest of your day. Stay well. We'll be back in the evening for the Silver Spook Twitch stream. Where is the end button? I don't have one. I think I clicked out of it. Oh, here it is right here.